Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day two, which is peak optimization strategies. And I can't think of a better example to have headlining this stream than hampers.com. Welcome, Patrick. Welcome, Hannah. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm Patrick.
And I'm Hannah.
I'm the MD.
And I'm the Ops Director.
We also happen to be father and daughter, father and stepdaughter. So we know one another quite well.
You are the dream team. So, guys, I say welcome back because this session is called Lessons from Peak, What on Earth Happened? And I say welcome back because just before peak, so in November last year, we actually interviewed you to understand what you were doing to prepare and plan for peak and to brace yourselves for what is a really important time of the year for you. So what I think would be really good is just to play a little video clip of when we interviewed you, when you were talking about everything that you were doing to prepare for peak. Okay, so let's have a look. I'm going to try and play a little video. Let's get out of here. Here we are. And here we go.
We are an e-commerce retailer of high quality gift hampers, and we also provide offline solutions for our corporate customers, for their clients and for their staff. We have a very, very peaky business, which means that we have a big peak at Christmas. We still do a considerable proportion of our annual turnover in that season, and it's very, very important to us that we get that right. We also have an international dimension to our business, which means that a lot of people order our products to be able to dispatch all around the world.
Some of the biggest challenges we face, certainly at peak, are the fact that we have super high volumes, and one of the things we don't know necessarily is day on day what those volumes are going to be. Another issue we face is obviously making sure that customers, when they buy our hampers from us, their gifts, they're really important. It's really emotive what they're buying, so it's making sure that we get the gift to the customer on the day that they wanted it.
Okay, so hi, back again. So I have to say, you both look incredibly relaxed. So I'm hoping you've recovered from peak. And thank you for coming back, because now we want to understand, what really happened. Did your operational plans, hold up? Were you impacted from any of the issues that, we were all concerned about as we were going into peak? Like, there was so much turmoil in the supply chain and labor costs and COVID. But before we reveal all, if I asked you to give us one word to describe how peak was, each of you, what would that be? Maybe we'll have ladies first. Hannah, what word would you use? Sorry, I think
Growth.
You might be on mute. Pardon?
Growth.
Growth. Fantastic. Okay, that's positive. Patrick. Steely. Okay, they're two very different words, set a different tone, but okay, so let's get into it then. So, peak is the time when most companies make their biggest sales. But for hampers.com, given the nature of your business, you feel that more acute than probably any other business. So tell us why the stakes are so particularly high for hampers.com at peak.
Quite simply, Bobby, 50% of our sales happen in 15 days, literally just before Christmas. So we are always trying to de-seasonalize. We're introducing new ranges throughout the year, and we're also increasing the quality of what we do, all the while putting the customer at the center of what we do. However, when you do all of those things, Christmas just gets bigger as well. And therefore, it's very, very difficult to be able to limit yourself to say, no, Christmas will only be this big and we're going to concentrate on the rest of the year. And so we liken our peak to Everest compared to most people who would liken it to a Ben Nevis or a Snowdon. And we desperately try to not have an Everest every year. But we did again this year, and it was almost back to pre-COVID patterns, Bobby, in terms of the percentages that we saw. Though I would say our business is partly on marketplaces like Amazon, partly direct to consumers and partly direct to businesses. The direct to business, the D2B part, those shoppers definitely bought a bit earlier, and they had a corporate discipline, which meant that we saw their trade happen earlier. The D2C, that was big and late.
Big and late. When we're talking big and late, how late are we talking? Because there was a lot of speculation about, will it come late? You know, peak, will it come at all? Because there was delays in supplies and products reaching shelves, etc. So how late was that?
Two sort of subgroups. One group, really good organized people, meant at the beginning of December, things looked really, really good, and we were on that lovely smooth trajectory. 16th of December, 17th of December, 18th of December, roof gets blown off and it just goes mad. So,
just goes mad, yeah.
I'll link that into some of the other elements that we had later on.
Of course.
But it's pretty late to know when your sales are coming on the 16th, 17th and 18th.
Now, Hannah, obviously you're the operations director. So whilst everybody's selling and doing a fantastic job, you're at the back end making sure that everything's picked, packed, dispatched, and it gets to where it needs to be on time. So, you know, was it what you expected? Did it go according, you know, was it what you expected? The pattern that Patrick said?
The pattern was what we expected. It's exactly. Thankfully, it's something that we, prior to 2020, because it was the pattern that we saw in 2019 with the pre-COVID sort of sale pattern in terms of that real peak of the last week. So we're prepared for that in a lot of the operations side of stuff. So we start packing in August, really, to start getting that going, to get that volume in our warehouse ready and ready for that peak. Obviously, for later on, we'll talk about some of the challenges, but in terms of planning and knowing what was coming from an operations side, we kind of were there and ready.
Yeah. So that's interesting because you talk about peak 2019 and peak 20 when we were in full lockdown. And there, again, before peak, there was a lot of speculation. Are we going to see a traditional sort of peak pattern, or are people going to be buying, you know, are the volumes going to be high throughout the year? You know, we talked about having peak on peak when we were in full lockdown. So Patrick, what about, you know, order volumes? How did actual sales perform against what you were hoping for, forecasting?
Incredibly well. I'm absolutely over the moon with how our customers reacted to the offering that we had this year. We had in our hearts got a dream of being able to beat 2020, because 2020 was 3 times the size of 2019. Yeah. In our heads, we'd been a bit harder and thought, well, that'll be a real challenge to be able to get there, but we planned for it and we bought for it, and I'm delighted to report that we did actually beat 2020, both in terms of our sales values and our volumes. We had some slight adjustments on the average order value, so we saw some changes in buying patterns, which I'm sure we'll chat about later, Bobby. But the overall season for us was tremendous. Thank you very much.
I'm delighted to hear that, and that's phenomenal performance. Well done, guys. When we knew that peak was going to be quite tricky, right? Because there was so much going on, so many factors that could potentially impact what kind of peak we were going to have, whether that was supply chain, whether that was, you know, inflation, and whether consumers or businesses would be spending the type of, you know, spending the way they were spending in previous months. There was a lot going on. But I remember you saying very clearly when we met back in November, Patrick, and you too, is that failing to plan is planning to fail. So you obviously put a lot of emphasis on all the upfront work and plans, but something always happens. We've been doing this for more than 20 years. Every year we're surprised by something. So in your case, what were the things that impacted your business, that you hadn't planned for?
Well, I think I alluded to it earlier. There was one fairly big cloud for me from the point of view of being the MD of the business, and that was that Omicron hit us really hard in the weekend of the 18th and 19th of December. So just as we're getting to that point where we're loading up the GFS trailers to the top, Bobby, we had on the Monday morning of the peak week, the peak of the peak of the peak, we had 30 out of 53 of our temporary warehouse workers not report to work. So we lost 2/3 of our team over a sort of 36-hour period from finishing on the Saturday to starting on the Monday. Thankfully, all of those team members have ended up being healthy. That's by far and away the most important thing. But the impact for us was that we had to take every hand in the business, so literally office, family, friends, everything, and literally throw everybody into making sure that as many hampers went out of the door as possible. And that was tough. And it was frustrating, but it wasn't anywhere near as tough and frustrating as it was for those customers who sadly we didn't quite get their gifts out of the door at the last minute. And you just can't help it as a retailer who wants to get it right every time, no exceptions, and especially in the gifting industry where you're so emotionally connected to every single transaction that it goes through. It doesn't matter how big or small it is, you just take it personally.
Yeah,
you can't not do that. So for me, that was a shadow over a great Christmas, and that was the overriding thing that I have as an emotion and a feeling about the season.
Which is a shame, because obviously, 99.9% of the hampers, you were able to. It's just that 0.1%, but for you, that's what's coloured peak for you. And I understand that because you're so passionate about your business. But Hannah, the impact on staff, I mean, I don't know how I would have felt if I woke up in the morning and on a Monday morning and found out more than half my workforce, my staff wasn't there. How did you manage with the labour situation over peak?
Yeah, so labour was always a tricky thing throughout the last quarter of last year anyway, in terms of getting labour and so temporary work into our warehouse. Certainly some of the challenges we're facing is just in terms of the local area, unemployment seems to not exist. So there is, and there's competing other industries who require the same sort of labour in our area. So that was always a challenge. And not only did it hit the warehouse staff, but it also hit myself and Patrick a week before the warehouse. So, in terms of just being able to lead and manage on the ground and be there to support, it was really, hard to be at home and trying to, as much as obviously work from home is a great thing, it really isn't when you're trying to run the operations of an online retail business and,
you need to be on the floor.
On the floor trying to be there. So it also hit our customer care team as well. So not only did we have the compounded effect of not being able to get hampers out when customers were querying that, then we were also struggling with customer care staff to then come back to those people. So really it was just a case of keeping everyone as motivated as possible, know that these were challenges that really we couldn't mitigate for, and hope that our customers would be understanding enough to know the situation. In most cases they were, so thankfully we were quite lucky in that respect.
Fantastic. Oh my gosh, I just can't imagine what must have been going through your head, how to recover from that situation, but you did that heroically. Were there any other operational glitches that you hadn't planned for, couldn't have forecasted?
There were one or two, Bobby. One or two.
That you can share.
If we start with one that happened fairly early on in our peak, so just as we're sort of on those rambling hills rather than on the north face, without any ropes and oxygen and clinging on for dear life. We didn't get our stock that Amazon fulfill for us into their warehouse early enough. And this is one of the things that I alluded to when we chatted before Christmas. We've been partnering with GFS for a while now, and we were fortunate that you guys were able to step in and provide third-party logistics, so 3PL services to us to help us absorb that additional production, because we don't have capacity to be able to store that production until it actually goes into the retail chain. So that was certainly, if we hadn't had that flexibility, if we hadn't had that relationship, knowing that lots of warehouses were already full, that would have been a major challenge. So, we were grateful that we were able to operate there, and the existing tech link between our two companies really did help. I guess other little things just compound the overall position. So we talked about drivers and not having drivers. We couldn't get our waste collected. So that's plastic, that's cardboard. And you don't really want to have great big mountains of cardboard stored outside your property. Not only does it not look very good, but you get fire risks, insurance issues. And obviously in a food business, with any food waste, you have to be incredibly careful that you're complying with the HSE at all times. So just things like that, really, Bobby, added to sort of added to the spice of the event.
Stress, yes. Well, look, I'm just really happy that we could help. I mean, we tried to pull out all the stops for us. We're very proud of being able to do whatever we can to protect peak. When you're in peak, it's all about how can you protect peak to make sure that everything runs smoothly, that you can fulfill those orders and get those parcels to the doorstep. But Hannah, we know that delivery is absolutely vital, and it all lands on your shoulders once that order is placed. Right? Not all the pressure is on you, and in most cases, that's where retailers have got the least control, because once it's left your warehouse, unless you've got your own fleet, then it's out of your hands. So let's talk a little bit about that, the delivery side of things. So carriers were very strict before peak, in terms of retailers having to get their capacity requirements and their plans in so that carriers can lock them down once they were in. Really, there wasn't much flexibility once you had those in. So what did you do? When did you start working on your delivery plans and putting all those forecasts together? And how did you go about doing it?
So we start planning in around June, July time each year in terms of our capacity. It's certainly for us a case of looking at previous year's trajectory, looking at what we predict as our growth being in our channels, and then also looking at what carrier split we need in terms of what service we're going to offer our customers. So we use premium delivery services and we choose premium carriers to make sure that our customer gets the best outcome. And then we look at that split, look at the volumes, and then spend some time with our account manager in GFS early in the year in July, June time to go through the breakdown of each carrier each day over the course of peak to predict exactly where we think we are going to be with volumes.
That's a lot of detail, yeah.
It is a lot of detail, but it really is so important to do, because there's nothing worse than not having enough carrier capacity on the day that someone's collecting, and then not being able to get those parcels out. So it's absolutely vital to the planning for peak.
And then how do you manage that on a day-to-day basis? Because like you mentioned earlier, it doesn't always go according to plan. Like, some orders come in late, so you've got, on some days you need more and other days you need less. So how did you manage that day to day?
Yeah, so certainly when it comes to December, when peak is there, we have a daily meeting with our GFS contacts in the customer service and in our account management team, where we are looking at current volumes for the next couple of days and also over the next couple of weeks, just to see where we are versus what carriers and trailer volume we have booked in. So we'll work daily with them to see if there's any anomalies and see if we are over or under, how we can manage that with extra trailers, or GFS actually having their own vans to come and help us with the extra capacities needed. So it's absolutely vital to Peak to have that support in managing those volumes on a day-to-day basis.
Was there an instance during Peak where you hit a glitch and you needed to go into contingency when it came to delivery? And would you like to tell us about that?
Yeah, there was actually. So we were really lucky enough to win a fantastic corporate order in September last year, which was 22,000 hampers, which went to every school in the UK, which was a phenomenal achievement for us. It was the biggest corporate order we ever had. However, they decided as a business they wanted to dispatch these hampers in the second week of December. Now, this was obviously after we'd done all of our peak planning, all of our capacity was already in and locked in. So another 22,000 was something that we wouldn't have been able to cope with. So we went to GFS to put forward our situation, and they were able to help us with taking on all of those 22,000 hampers, where we packed them and labelled them here, put them into a GFS site, and they then dispatched them from their GFS site in December for our customers, and all arrived correctly and on time. So it was, something that was very obviously a great opportunity, but at the same time, it was like the worst time in terms of dispatch date. So GFS massively helped at that point to make sure that we could deliver those at a time where we were already dispatching that many anyway. So
yeah, and I guess the takeaway from this, people that are listening, is obviously you can plan and plan and plan, but you always need a plan B, right? Because there's going to be a point where you're going to come unstuck, and that's when contingency comes into it. So contingency planning, or having partners that you can really rely on, can make or break Peak for you. Now that you've come out of the other side of Peak, right, and you both look relaxed and healthy, which is great, what happens next? What do you do now?
So the first thing we do after Peak is kind of get like a roundup from all of the team on what their Peak review is. I have meetings with all my managers to see how it went, what lessons we could have learned, and make sure that they're documented and we can action them where possible for next Peak. We also have reviews with our key suppliers, so we will be having one next week with then GFS, which will take some of the data internally, and we will then spend that time with our account manager to make sure that we can make any improvements, or actually not, if there isn't improvements, we can go, well, that worked well and we can take this forward for next year. So that's starting to happen. That's already happened, and that will continue happening until then we go into peak planning again in June for actual volume.
It's a continual cycle, isn't it?
It's continual, yeah.
And I guess you guys sort of, like Chris mentioned in the introduction, there's multiple peaks or mini peaks this year.
Yes. Yeah.
So are you going to be focusing a lot around trying to build business around things like Mother's Day and all the other sort of key events?
Yeah, so we've already started that actually. So Valentine's Day is coming up in a couple of weeks. We've already booked additional volume with GFS to allow for that, for the Saturday dispatch, for hopefully getting there on Valentine's Day on Monday. So we've already started that, and we replicate the process that we do for Christmas peak at those other times as well, to make sure that we get additional volumes in, and we're on the ball with all of that as well.
That's fantastic. So now that you've sort of started that wash up process, what do you think are going to be the key learnings that you're going to be taking forward into your operations and the business from Peak 2021? Patrick, what about your perspective?
I'd probably give you three things that immediately come to mind. Number one, we're going to start planning and executing our pre-packing and our peak earlier. We're going to bring it probably 3 to 4 weeks earlier than we've done previously. That means that we effectively run Father's Day straight into peak season operations. So that'll be a change. And that'll also hopefully mean that we can be ready for January. We were hungover this year. The season hit us hard. And then when we come to January, I'm looking at January and thinking, we've missed opportunities, and I don't like doing that. So we need to be really ready for January 2023. I think the second thing is there's definitely some automation that can increase productivity in certain key points in our business, in terms of technology that can support reduction of manual intervention, especially in labelling and things like that, Bobby. And then I think the third thing is we're going to spend some time, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do this with you as well, but we perceived that there was a bit of a change in terms of customer behaviour at checkout, where normally you've got people maybe looking for the cheapest or the fastest or a specific delivery date, in that last week just before Christmas, because you don't want mince pies in early December. But there's a change in consumer behaviour there as well that we've noticed, that consumers are asking, what about the greenest delivery option as well? So it's not just how fast can you do it, how accurately can you do it, and what's the cost. There's definitely a shift within both corporates and consumers to really put this at the heart of what they're doing, and they're asking questions about it that they've never asked before. So we need to be prepared for that, and that'll mean working with you, working with the carriers to understand what they're doing, because it's a very visible element of the environmental impact that we have, regardless of what we do with our supply chain and our operations. It's very visible to our customers and our consumers. And that's a change. So we've got to prepare for that. I'm sure there's other things, Hannah. So.
Yeah, I think that's. I think your instincts are spot on there, Patrick, with regards to consumers being far more conscious about the impact of, delivery and having things delivered, what that does to the planet, etc. So yes, I think your instincts are absolutely spot on that. It's an area that we are building out and trying to help retailers get on that green journey. But Hannah, how about you?
So one of the things for me, obviously reiterating what Patrick said, but certainly for me, it's looking at how we can extend our effectively our cut-off time on our website. So obviously that's limited to when our carriers can pick up for us, and at the minute we'd like to extend that. So we're looking currently with GFS to how we can extend that cut-off time, using the GFS's services themselves to see how we can extend time to get more time to get it into the hub effectively and make sure that we can offer our customers a better service with regards to that, really.
Is that when you say cut-off time on the web, is that sort of like the cut-off time for when they can place an order for next day?
So, right, basically. So obviously, there's plenty of people that offer later times. One of the the downsides of being where we're located in the UK, it means we're further away from some of the central hubs of the carriers, but obviously that's something that then GFS can help us with in terms of making that extra deliveries, those extra miles for us to make sure that we can to get those there. So,
and as well as improving the service for meaning customers have got a longer window to buy, is that also going, do you see that increasing your sales as well? Do you think that's going to help with growing sales?
Absolutely, yeah. Just giving that people those extra time to buy, if that can go into browsing over the dinner table and those sort of things, like later evening times, that's always going to help.
Yeah. By the way, Hannah, did you catch the hint from Patrick about Father's Day?
I did.
That was very good, Patrick. Very good.
Thank you. I know what hampers are getting developed now, so it's exciting.
Just pick one off the shelf. I tell you what, I've got another question, but before we do, there was something we haven't covered really, is supplies, because we did there was a lot of issue about suppliers being late in providing product to retailers, etc. Did you experience anything like that with the supplies of the contents of your hampers?
There was definitely some challenges, but I think certainly that's something we did plan for, and thankfully it wasn't something that hit us too hard. I think we knew that some of the challenges were going to come from Brexit, so we were planning for that, and certainly a lot of our long lead items that we get from overseas, we were buying well in advance to make sure that we mitigated any risk of that. We did see isolated incidents of supply chain issues with some of our suppliers, and they would tend to have the same issues as us with staffing and their production and their manufacturing. So there was some isolated issues, but overall, I think we were on top of our supply chain and managed the delivery of our components quite well.
Bobby, on that, I don't think I've seen a time when so many people have had so much disruption and they've just generally knuckled down and worked so hard.
It's amazing.
It really is. It really was a great effort by all of our suppliers, not only GFS, but all of our suppliers that really delivered for us. I think it was their hard work also that helped us get through.
And I would second that. I would say that all the challenges we've seen over the past 2 years, from COVID to supply chain issues to managing all the changes from the impact of Brexit, I think it's been incredible how the industry has worked together across that entire supply chain, from manufacturers to retailers to the carriers. Have done a phenomenal job to try and just protect that. And we've seen the growth from that, which is fantastic. Now, when you do a wash up, we always tend to focus on the things that went wrong, right? Let's be honest. But what about the things that you feel that you're proud of when you look back and you think, wow, that went really well? What would you say those were?
So for me, it would be certainly the passion and commitment from all of our team. I think that, we are really proud of building a brand of people who care about what we do and care about the outcome, care about what the customer receives, and care about how they interact with us as a business. And that just showed with all of the team that we have here that when we got hit with Omicron, and those last few days where we were just the passion and care that went into making sure those hampers got out the door, but also the you could see the disappointment, and that you wouldn't get that if people didn't just genuinely care about what they did here. So we've built a phenomenal team here, and they care and they work hard, and that's fantastic. And then obviously, what worked well was the GFS side of stuff. I don't think we would have been able to do what we did without their support when we needed it, in terms of what we had with that corporate order, with carrier management and all those sort of things. When things go wrong, I think that certainly that was a big win for us.
Fantastic. And Patrick, what about from your perspective, business side, what would you say were the highlights for you?
I'm going to tie back into Steely at the beginning. A highlight for me is the fact that without having to ask, my colleagues, the team here, put in the most unbelievable effort through early hours of the morning, 7 days a week, worked unbelievably hard, without asking, just to try to get the job done in the circumstances they're in. So that feeling of camaraderie and team and effort, and just seeing everybody pull together, an unbelievable highlight. However, the Steely bit comes in terms of Steely determination, that when I saw how pale, tired, worn out they were, customer care people who had just absolutely, completely and utterly worked themselves into the floor alongside the warehouse team. The steeliness is, I won't do that to them again. That pre-planning and making sure we improve and change, that will happen, full stop. So the biggest high is also tied into the biggest low, Bobby.
Well, on a personal level, I think that's it's just so encouraging to hear your focus on staff, because at the end of the day, we are, our business comes down to the people that we employ and our staff. And obviously, their commitment and passion comes from you guys being such wonderful employers and looking after them, which is so important. But it must be so tough now. You've just come out of peak. It's January, like you said, Patrick, earlier. You just feel that there could have been opportunities that you've missed the boat on in January. How do you pick everybody up after they've had such an exhausting time? How do you get that energy and motivation and momentum back up again?
Actually, Bobby, we don't. The thing that does it is when you read the customer reviews, and when you actually see what our little place in the big picture actually is, in terms of being able to communicate that hug, that love, or whatever. We've just launched a campaign called Just Because, where you can go and nominate someone to be able to be a recipient of a hamper, just simply because they've done something for you. They're a great mom, a great grandma, whatever it may be. And obviously you don't pay for those. We're making sure that our bit of that reward is to say, yeah, you know, this is on us. And I think the moment that you start to see and get back into the fact that we're in a phenomenally privileged position in terms of someone who's giving something that means so much to that recipient, it kind of washes away, and you know you've just got to get on with it and keep looking after those people. That's alongside some great new products that we're developing, some changes that we're making in terms of web developments. We've got some internal tech stuff going on. We've fortunately got 2 or 3 new hires who are coming in, and they always ask new questions and are full of energy. And I don't think we've ever looked forward to a year more. And when we think that last Christmas is tinged with a bit of a cloud in terms of season, what are we going to do next year? You know, we're going to really knock the socks off next year when we get these things right.
I'm more than confident that you will. So it's really exciting. We've got a few minutes left, so we've got some Q&A. Let me just have a look at what we've got here. So the first question, if I can read this correctly. Oh gosh. How confident are you in sales volumes peak 2022? So I guess the question is, are we, you know, everybody thought there's no way we could have a peak like 2021 because everybody was locked in. So everybody had no chart, you know, no option but to buy online. But then, you know, 2021, it looks like people have had a really strong peak again. So do you think it's going to grow again in 2020, this year, 2022? What are you going to be bracing yourselves for? Okay,
so interesting question. I mean, you look to say what will be happening in the market. So you look at macroeconomic factors. So you look at households that are undoubtedly struggling under the pressures of inflation and in heating bills, and how will that pan out this winter and next winter? Because obviously peak 22 from a consumer point of view. So there's undoubtedly pressures there. There's also where will we be economically in terms of growth. We've had our sort of COVID bounce back growth in the economy. Where will that be? And we've got political instability as well, which doesn't happen at a macro level. Interestingly, over the last 40 years that we've been in business, not all while trading online, of course, but you know, we've actually found that Christmas gifting, and in particular food and wine gifting, is pretty robust. It doesn't matter whether you're in a recession, or it doesn't matter whether you're actually in good times or fairly flat times. People tend to ensure that what they give to the people that they love and care for is something that they've saved up a bit for and is there. So in terms of the macro position, I don't feel it's going to have a significant impact. In terms of market, I don't believe our market is growing in very, very quickly in terms of the traditional Christmas hamper. But if you add in the plethora of new entrants who are working in areas such as health and well-being and wellness, and bringing in other componentry as well as food and wine, you know, the gifting market is absolutely huge. We also trade internationally. We have an awful lot of customers who want products delivered into the UK on behalf of the people that they care for. And so there's a massive, massive global market for us to be able to go for, where we're not even a gnat on the back of a gnat on the back of an elephant. You know, we're just totally insignificant. So from the point of view of market growth, there will be some. There's a lot to go for. The shifts in buying in terms of people being able to further move online. And I think there's just things that payments, you know, we don't talk about those sort of things terribly often, but things like payments, things like marketplaces will be driving consumer behavior, and certainly Amazon that'll be presenting later. Those will all have positive effects on the market. So maybe naively, I'm hugely optimistic for 2022, and that volumes can be big.
Yeah. Well, certainly nothing puts a smile on your face as much as receiving a hamper. It's such a joy. It really is. What about, obviously there's a lot of growth out there. Like you said, Patrick, there's so much to go for, but you still need to know where you're going to prioritize and focus. Where does international fit into this? Because you're very strong in the UK market. What are your thoughts on outside, where you see growth outside of the UK?
Thanks, Bobby, for that one. If we, first of all, I must split it between whether we have a customer who's overseas or whether it's that we're delivering overseas.
Yeah.
But very, very briefly, just on delivery, we last season we delivered to 113 countries around the world. Anything that wasn't EU, pretty damn good. There's always a few oddities. Getting anything into Russia is always a challenge. You'd be amazed what the customs officials query and ask for. But if we turn to Europe, we found getting goods into Europe this season particularly awkward. We had customs officials, border guards who were implementing effectively Brexit too early. And so some were bringing in regulations early, some were ignoring them, some weren't. It depends whether you got them on a good day or a bad day, inconsistencies, and then just the scope of interpretation that's there, the complexity of country of origin versus HS codes versus all of the other elements of prohibited goods. Being able to get any goods into certain countries is just incredibly awkward. So from that perspective, that delivery, that was tough. From the point of view of attracting overseas customers, we're spending quite a bit of time with our external advisors, including our SEO advisors, who are helping us identify those key markets where potentially there's things like the British diaspora has seeped into those. So in the States, that could be New York, for example. There's a lot of people that have migrated there. Traditional markets that we do well, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, South Africa, Commonwealth links, again, particularly strong maybe this year with the Platinum Jubilee. And then there's totally new markets where we just have to be, the key thing we have to be careful of is getting the right quality product to them. So if you've got food and alcohol, some countries can't export alcohol, and you want to get the right quality product to them. So the shipping challenge is there, Bobby, just sending them from the UK. So looking at where we do business, maybe we've got to look east and west in terms of having some form of operations, and that's certainly the leadership team here are looking at all of those options now. Lots of scope though.
Well, you decide. Yeah, well, you decide where you want to be shipping, and we'll make sure we get you there. This is a question for you now, Hannah. What are your top 3 tips that you would give to an operations manager ahead of peak this year?
Obviously, what we've talked about already, planning would be number 1. Making sure that you're on top of what's going to happen, making sure you're looking at risks, looking at how you can mitigate things, and making sure you can improve and enhance on last year. I would say number 2 of any operations management is efficiency. So it's how you can, do more with what you have, whether that's technology, whether that's processes, whether that's tools. So obviously GFS is a great example of efficiency for us, because obviously we've got one single source of carrier management, one direct person, and not multiple carriers we have to deal with. So effectively, by using GFS, it helps us to be more efficient in our logistics and our carrier management, which is obviously great for us and great for our business. And the third would be quality and quality management, and making sure that we are, as an operations team, delivering on the promises we're making as a brand. So for me, this is the crux of what operations do. So we're promising delivery, great quality products, delivery, luxury, an experience. We want to connect you with loved ones, and effectively the operations team with the delivery of that promise. So for me, those are the top 3 tips.
And when you explain it that way, it just goes to show that back end, what happens behind the scenes on the operational side, behind sales and marketing, is just so vital, absolutely vital. And just fulfilling that customer promise, because like you said, it's the experience the customer gets when they receive the hamper, how they deliver it, how it, what quality it arrives at, just can really impact not only your brand, but also whether they come back to you and want to buy again. Yeah. One last question, which is around consumer behavior and delivery preferences. Now, we talked about green. There's a lot of debate in the marketplace about whether fast and free, everybody should be offering fast and free. And I think a lot of that behavior has been driven by, some sectors like fast fashion, where, introducing sort of free delivery, free returns just to incentivize purchase. What's your view on that?
Certainly from my perspective, I think that we just need to move to a more sustainable approach to how we deliver and how we operate as a business, personally and just generally on the wider scale. I think that, we have a good opportunity as a business to make sure that we can do good and do business with purpose. So one of the biggest agenda items for us is looking at how we can potentially offer customers green solutions to how they deliver. And I know that's something that we're going to start working with you on in GFS to start how we can do that. It's certainly something at the top of our agenda on how we can make sure that we are, reducing our impact on the environment and reducing our impact on the overall society really, and the environment, to make sure we're doing the best we can do for all those areas. So it's absolutely high on our agenda. And if we can do that whilst also, meeting customer expectations, I think there's wins all around.
I mean, from my perspective, Bobby, thinking about what customers want, there are times, if it's I'm sorry to hear about your loss, or for whatever reason why there's a spur of the moment need to send a gift and you want to get it there quickly, that will never change. There's also those disorganized mails on the 23rd of December and the 12th and the 13th of February who have got nowhere near being organized, who will have to rush gifts to certain locations. I've never been there, of course. I've got a warehouse full, so I can cheat. But then I think the majority of people in the gifting industry, we're fairly fortunate. People know that there's an event that they're gifting for, so birthday, anniversary, etc. And just taking birthday as an example, a prime area of focus for us. Generally, people are pretty organised. They know that event is coming up. So actually, if they know that they can get it there on that named day, and if they know that they can get it there on the back of an electric vehicle, that certainty that it's going to arrive to resonate with the event and that they're doing it in a green way, that's what I think consumers are actually really looking for. And it's matching those two together, that you get the service and you get the sustainable the sustainable delivery option at the same time. And come what may, Bobby, we've got to deliver that at a value for money price. There's no point trying to do that if it's up here, because consumers, the purses are too tight. It's got to be done on a sustainable basis.
And on that note, I think that's a perfect point to conclude our session on, which is at the end of the day, you have to be able to offer your consumers a broad choice of delivery options, so that whether they are conscious about the planet or whether they've, like you, Patrick, have forgotten Hannah's birthday and need to get a present quickly, then you've got all the delivery options there, correct? So it is about choice. But thank you so much, both of you, for joining us and for sharing your lessons from Peak. It's been an absolute honor. So thank you so much, Patrick and Hannah, and good luck for the rest of the year.
We're most grateful for the opportunity to Tamebay into GFS and to Amazon as a sponsor. So thank you very much indeed.